This is like kind of a weird question that has been more of like just a thought that I've had. Like all of these conversations, like some of the themes that I've started to take, and I've really only had like 4 or 5 interviews so far,
Hmm.
is that the women all seem like they're really that I've talked to well prepared for kind of like a transition after sports. And I have kind of like 2 theories on why that might be. I think women are just in general like better at sharing and talking about things. And so I think if there is a moment of transition that's happening, I think they share it with their friends and they talk about it. And I think guys, it seems like, don't really do
Mm.
that. And so there's almost like, I guess within sports for guys, to being an individual, being somebody who is strong and all of that helps them be successful. And then once they get out of sports, it's kind of like that isn't as self-serving. And so they have to kind of learn to share again. But I guess another theory that I've had, and I'm curious what you think, is I think women's professional sports is just now kind of becoming an actual option.
Hmm.
Like in talking with
I think
Steph,
that.
Steph was like, I was one of the top 1% of the 1% of women's soccer players in the world, and I was making $20,000 a year. Uh, and so, like, that's not feasible. And if she's going to go be a banker at Goldman Sachs, like, those two things are not equivalent as far
Hmm.
as compensation goes. And so I'm curious, like, if growing up, being a professional athlete, which like for me was always the goal. And for all of the guys I've chatted with, like they're all like, yeah, I wanted to be a professional athlete. And a lot of them achieved that. That was the goal. If that was the goal for you, or if because of kind of where women's sports was at when we were growing up, if that wasn't necessarily a goal, it was, fun and you wanted to progress it as far as you could, but maybe in talking with you, it seems like maybe more of like a means to an end of like, getting an education, getting fulfillment out of it, but not necessarily like this will become my livelihood.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, I used to describe basketball as this like vehicle, this bus that I could jump on that would take me to places that I would never get to see or experience if it weren't for it. But I mean, I was very open in college that like I want to go into a career path that is stable, lets me grow, and also lets me make real money. And none of those things like, you can't check any of those things off if you were to go play. Even now, honestly, if you were to go play in the WNBA. I mean, there are some people that they have checked that off, but for the majority of people, that wouldn't be the case. And also, even if you were to go play overseas, it's like you still make more often than you would in the WNBA, but I didn't wanna go live in I mean, my friend Nicole, I don't remember where she went and lived, totally blanking. It was somewhere in Europe, but I was like, I don't want to go do that. Like, I've been away from my family for holidays for 4 years. Like, I want to see my family. And again, it's not really an equal trade off if it becomes the monetary piece. And I didn't do basketball for that either. I did basketball for all those other reasons, and those felt like they went out the window. So I think it's that. I will say though about your first point about sharing. Do you think you're right that we share more? But it's a lot of the blind leading the blind. Like, I don't think it's there's like openness, but there's also a lot of like, what are how do you do this? And like, who's done this well after graduation? And honestly, I found it really hard to find people that had gone out and like made careers and could really like bond with me over that shared lack of identity. And I think I think that's a lot of reasons that people I think there are a lot of coaches and a lot of people that, played and go into it because they are really talented at the game and they stay in that world. But I think there's a lot of people that stay in that world because it's familiar and it's really hard to figure out what to do after. And I would just always hope that staying in that world is a choice and a thing you really are passionate and like talented at and want to keep doing versus feeling like, I don't know, maybe I'll just, coach. And that's where I struggled to find people that like could help me in that phase because it's just none of the systems are set up to like get you a job after. All those systems are set up to make sure that you're like performing. And I'm not saying they have to be, but it's a really big gap for sure.
Yeah.